My name is Rebecca Miller. I'm 38 years old, and I've spent the last 15 years of my life working as an elementary school teacher in Austin, Texas. Most people would describe me as calm, logical, and grounded. I never believed in the supernatural. I believed in hard work, kindness, and raising my 2 kids with love and responsibility. I grew up in church, but over the years, faith became more of a memory than a lifestyle. I didn't reject God. I just placed him on a shelf, like an old book I thought I didn't need anymore. Life became about routines, school drop-offs, lesson plans, groceries, bills. My days were full, but my soul was empty, and I didn't even know it until one Friday afternoon, something happened that shattered my world. It was the end of a long school week. I was in the teacher's lounge grading papers when I suddenly felt a crushing pressure in my chest. I tried to breathe, but everything started spinning. My colleague Sarah asked if I was okay, but I couldn't speak. The last thing I remember was her screaming my name as I collapsed to the floor. They told me later that I had suffered a massive cardiac arrest. They rushed me to St. David's Medical Center, but I was gone. My heart stopped, no pulse, flatlined. That's when it began, the moment everything changed, the moment of death and the crossing over. When people talk about death, they usually speak of fear, of darkness, of pain. But what I experienced was something entirely different. The moment my heart stopped, I felt a strange lightness, like my body had been a heavy coat and I had just slipped out of it. I was suddenly floating above the hospital bed, watching doctors and nurses rush around my lifeless body. But there was no panic in me, no fear, only peace, a peace deeper than anything I had ever known. I remember seeing the nurse try to restart my heart. I saw my body shake with the defibrillator. But I also saw something else. A light, not just any light. It was alive. It pulsed with warmth and love. It wasn't coming from the hospital room. It was coming from somewhere beyond. A presence was drawing me toward it. A presence that felt safe and somehow familiar. As I drifted closer, the hospital sounds began to fade, and I heard something else. A voice, soft, powerful, undeniable. It said, "You are not alone, Rebecca." That's when I knew I had crossed over. I was no longer in the world I once knew. Now, before I continue, I want to ask you something. Have you or someone you know ever experienced something unexplainable? Something beyond this world? Drop your story in the comments. I'd love to hear what you've been through. You're not alone. This space is safe for you to share. Now let me tell you, what I saw next shook me to the core. The encounter with the living light of Christ. The light pulled me in, not with force, but with love. It wrapped around me like a warm embrace on the coldest night of your life. Every fear, every regret, every unanswered question melted away in that moment. I wasn't floating anymore. I was standing, though not on any ground I could recognize. Everything around me shimmered, colors I can't even name, sounds that felt like music and language combined. And then, he appeared, not like I expected. There was no crown, no thunder, no shouting angels, just a man, but more than a man. His presence lit up everything. He was made of light, yet more real than anything I'd ever touched. His eyes. They didn't just look at me. They looked into me, and I felt more known, more loved than ever before. It was Jesus. I knew it without needing to be told. He didn't say I'm Jesus. He didn't need to. My soul just recognized him, the way a child recognizes a parent's voice in the dark. I fell to my knees, not out of fear, but because my legs couldn't hold the weight of that glory. And I cried, not because I was sad, but because for the first time in my life, I understood what love truly is. He walked toward me, smiling, not with his lips, but with his entire being. And then he spoke, "Rebecca, I have something to show you. The world is not seeing clearly. The mark is already here." Those words hit me like thunder. The mark? I wanted to ask, "What do you mean?" But before I could even form the question, everything around us changed. The atmosphere shifted, and I was about to be shown something that would turn my world upside down, and maybe yours too. The revelation. The mark is already among you. In an instant, the light around us dimmed, not in a frightening way, but in a way that said, "Pay attention." Jesus turned his gaze toward what looked like a massive screen, but it wasn't a screen. It was as if reality itself was bending to show me something. And then he said, gently but firmly, "The mark of the beast is not what most people think it is." Images began to flash before me. Cities, churches, schools, homes, normal places filled with people. But something was wrong. I saw people living their everyday lives, glued to their phones, arguing on social media, obsessed with money, followers, pleasure, and control, and on their foreheads and hands, I saw marks, not physical ones, spiritual ones. Some were dark like ink, others glowed faintly, pulsing like signals. Most people had no idea they were marked. They smiled, they shopped, they worshipped comfort, image, and self, but they were already claimed. I turned to Jesus, heart pounding, and whispered, "So it's not a chip." He shook his head slowly. "The mark is not a device. It's a decision, a surrender of the heart. When people give their minds and hands to the spirit of deception, they are marked, not in the future, now." That was the moment it hit me. The beast isn't just coming. It's already working, silently, invisibly, through systems, ideologies, entertainment, even false teachings wrapped in truth. My mind couldn't keep up, but my spirit understood. And now I have to ask you something, straight from my heart. Do you think the mark of the beast is already here, just hidden in plain sight? Tell me what you believe in the comments. Let's bring the darkness into the light, together. What I saw next made me realize just how many are already marked, without even knowing. What the mark truly means. A spiritual trap. Jesus stood beside me, watching the scenes unfold. Millions of people going about their lives, unaware they were carrying something eternal on their souls. Then he said something I'll never forget. The greatest deception is not forced. It is welcomed. I saw people choosing the mark every day, not out of fear, but out of desire. Desire for control, for acceptance, for power, for comfort. They didn't need to be threatened or tracked. They were already giving themselves over. The mark wasn't a future horror. It was a present condition of the heart. It hit me, the beast doesn't need to chain you. It only needs to make you comfortable. I saw churches preaching comfort instead of repentance. I saw leaders twisting truth to please the masses. I saw families torn apart by lies that felt good, but destroyed slowly. Every time someone compromised truth, the mark grew deeper. Jesus looked at me with eyes full of sorrow and said, "It begins with small choices. The surrender of your voice, the numbing of your spirit, the love of the world over the love of me." It was then I realized, the mark is subtle, it's spiritual, it's not about technology, it's about loyalty. Who owns your mind, your hands, your time, your truth? So I want to ask you something. From a place of love, where is your heart leading you? Have you been trading small pieces of your soul for peace, success, or pleasure? Be honest in the comments. Your story could wake someone else up. Let's speak truth before the silence becomes permanent. What I was about to see next was even more terrifying, because Jesus didn't just show me the marked. He showed me how easy it is to become one of them. How people are accepting the mark without knowing what Jesus showed me next broke my heart. I saw people, good people, unknowingly walking into spiritual slavery. Parents, students, business owners, even pastors. They weren't evil, they weren't violent, but they were blind to what they were giving up, piece by piece. One man caught my attention, a young father from Ohio. He worked hard, loved his wife, and went to church on Sundays. But during the week, he consumed hours of toxic media, repeated lies he heard on TV, and laughed at sin like it was harmless entertainment. I saw a faint mark on his forehead grow darker each time he silenced his conscience to fit in. Another vision showed a social media influencer, a beautiful woman who posted positive messages but secretly battled emptiness and addiction. She had exchanged her identity for applause. The more likes she got, the deeper the invisible mark etched into her soul. Jesus whispered, "They think they're free, but they are owned." It wasn't about chips or tattoos. It was about people choosing allegiance to lies, to systems of control, to pride, to the illusion of safety and success. The beast doesn't look like a monster, Jesus said. It looks like everything you ever wanted, without me. That line shook me to my core. I saw the subtle ways people say yes to the beast every day, compromising truth to avoid conflict, staying silent to stay safe, mocking righteousness to feel modern, living for pleasure and calling it freedom. Every choice, another step closer. Now let me ask you something very real. Have you ever ignored your convictions just to avoid rejection? Maybe you felt that inner pull, the spirit nudging you, but chose comfort instead. If this speaks to you, write "I felt that too" in the comments. You're not alone, and this isn't to shame you, it's to wake us all up, because what Jesus showed me next wasn't just about the marked. It was about those who are being sealed by God, and the light that cannot be overcome. The vision of spiritually marked crowds. The next vision hit me like a wave of cold water. Jesus stretched out his hand, and suddenly, I was above the earth, looking down on entire cities. Not in the way satellites do, but spiritually. I could see people's souls, and what I saw was terrifying. Crowds of people, walking, laughing, working, shopping, marked on their foreheads, their hands glowing dark like brands. Some flickered with a sickly red hue, others were nearly black, pulsing like decaying wounds. But what shook me wasn't just the marks. It was that they didn't even see them. They lived their lives as usual, buying, selling, posting, scrolling, all while carrying a spiritual poison that was pulling them further and further away from truth. And then Jesus said something that made my stomach turn. Many of these think they're saved. I couldn't breathe. He showed me a large church, thousands of people singing, raising their hands, but only a few of them glowed with a heavenly light. The rest were marked. They sing to me with their mouths, Jesus said, but their hearts belong to the world. I wept for the church, for the world, for myself. The deception was so complete, so quiet, so cultural, that even the most religious were walking blindly into spiritual captivity. But not everyone. In the midst of the crowd, I saw a few shining, like stars, sealed, not because they were perfect, but because they were fully surrendered. Their hearts were aligned with heaven, even when their lives were messy. Jesus pointed to them and said, "These are mine. They've chosen me over comfort, over popularity, over fear. Friend, I need to ask you something from the deepest part of my soul. If your soul could be seen right now, would there be a mark or a seal? Be honest. You don't have to explain. Just comment. Seal me, Lord. If you want to belong fully to Him, let others know they're not alone in this awakening, because what I was about to witness next would reveal hope in the darkness and a coming battle that we're all going to face. The invisible resistance and the sealed by truth. After witnessing the spiritually marked crowds, I felt crushed. The weight of what I had seen, millions living in deception, it was unbearable. But Jesus wasn't done. He looked at me, eyes full of fire and mercy, and said, "Now I will show you those who have not bowed." In an instant, the vision changed. I began to see individuals, men and women, young and old, scattered like hidden lights across the globe. Some were in small apartments, praying quietly. Some were fasting in secret. Some were preaching bold truths and being mocked for it. Some had lost friends, jobs, even family, but had not denied me. And they were glowing, sealed, not just marked by belief, but bound by love to the truth of Christ. Their foreheads carried no darkness, only a seal I cannot describe. It pulsed like divine gold, alive and radiant, and no system, no beast, no government could erase it. "These are my warriors," Jesus said. "They are hidden now, but soon they will rise." I saw a teacher in California who refused to compromise biblical truth in her classroom, sealed. I saw a man in prison, falsely accused, worshipping with tears in his cell, sealed. I saw a teenager in Africa burning his idols in a fire and choosing Jesus, sealed. I saw a former witch in New Orleans, now casting out demons in Jesus' name, sealed. And then Jesus looked at me and said, "I don't need crowds. I build armies in caves." It reminded me that God never works the way the world expects. He doesn't build through fame. He builds through faithfulness. And then, like a whisper into my soul, I heard, "You must tell them. It's not too late. They can still be sealed." Now I ask you, from the depths of this experience, have you felt like you're part of something unseen, something rising in secret? Maybe you've lost friends because of your faith. Maybe you feel alone. Type, "I'm part of the resistance" in the comments if you know you're called to stand in truth. Let the sealed find each other. Let us rise together. Because what Jesus showed me next was the warning. A line that would be drawn in the sand. The final warning. The test is beginning. The next thing Jesus showed me wasn't just a vision. It felt like a prophetic alarm bell, ringing through eternity. The atmosphere shifted, the warmth faded, and I could feel the weight of something coming. Jesus' voice became more intense, not angry, but filled with righteous urgency. The test is no longer coming. It has already begun. I saw people standing on a vast field. At first they were mingling, talking, even laughing. But then a line of fire split the ground between them. Clean, direct, unstoppable. On one side were the sealed, those who had chosen truth, who bore God's light. On the other were the marked. Not because they had been forced, but because they had chosen compromise over conviction, comfort over courage, the approval of the world over the approval of heaven. And then came the moment of separation. Jesus showed me laws being passed, quietly, cleverly, that would corner believers into decisions. Churches being pressured to update the gospel. Entire nations celebrating what God called wicked. And those who refused to bow were targeted, not with guns at first, but with shame, silencing, isolation, a war of the spirit, where neutrality would no longer be possible. They will call it peace, Jesus said, but it will be the greatest war the soul has ever faced. And I knew the real test wasn't coming through fear. It would come through subtle pressure, through being tired, afraid, alone, through choosing to say nothing when truth was under attack. But in the chaos, I also saw strength. I saw believers who had never spoken out suddenly rise with fire in their voices. I saw ordinary people, mothers, mechanics, teenagers, standing firm in love and boldness. I saw the Holy Spirit flooding their hearts with courage. And Jesus turned to me and said, "Tell them, this is the time to choose. This is the time to stand. This is the time to be sealed." So I'm asking you now, in this sacred moment, where will you stand when the pressure comes? When silence is easier and truth is costly, will you stand with Christ? Type, "I choose truth, no matter the cost," in the comments if your answer is yes. Let this be the moment you draw the line in your own heart, because the final chapter is no longer just a warning. It's already unfolding. My return and the mission to expose the truth. The visions faded. I turned to Jesus, trembling, not with fear, but with holy awe. My heart was broken, awakened, transformed. And then, with the gentlest touch, he placed his hand over my chest. "Rebecca," he said, "you must return. Your time is not finished. There are many still sleeping, and I am calling them to wake up." I wanted to stay. I didn't want to leave that place of peace, truth, and overwhelming love. But deep down, I knew this wasn't just for me. He showed me my children, my students, people I hadn't even met yet, all of them waiting for a message they didn't even know they needed. "Tell them the truth," he said. "Speak the things no one wants to say. Show them that the mark is not what they think, and that I am not who the world makes me out to be. I am the same yesterday, today, and forever." And with those final words, a flash of light surged through me. I gasped for air, and I woke up in a hospital bed at St. David's Medical Center, surrounded by machines, a nurse screaming for help, and my sister crying beside me. They said I had been gone for 7 minutes, but what I saw felt like a lifetime. Since that day, nothing in my life has been the same. I left my job. I changed how I live. I surrendered fully to Christ, not just with words, but with my entire being. And I made a vow to warn as many people as I can, to call out the counterfeit gospel, to prepare hearts for what's coming, and to seal as many souls for heaven as possible. So I ask you now, from the bottom of my soul, do you feel the urgency too? Is something inside you stirring, like you've been asleep and now you're waking up? If this story has touched you, please write "I'm awake now" in the comments. Share it with someone you love. Let this be the beginning of their awakening too. Conclusion. A final word of hope. You may be wondering, is there still time? Yes. If you're breathing, there's still time. Jesus isn't looking for perfect people. He's looking for surrendered ones. He's calling the broken, the outcast, the doubters, the ashamed, the ones who thought they missed their chance. If you're reading this or watching this, that means you still have a choice. Choose light. Choose truth. Choose to be sealed by the one who gave everything for you. Because even though the darkness is growing, so is the light, and the greatest harvest of souls the world has ever seen is already beginning. If this message touched your heart, don't keep it to yourself. Like, comment, and most importantly, share this message. You never know who's one video away from eternal transformation. Jesus is coming. The time is short. The choice is yours. Subscribe to this channel for more powerful testimonies and truth-centered messages. Together, we can wake the world up one soul at a time.